And we are live. Good morning. Welcome to the audience and welcome to our speakers. Welcome to the webinar commissioned by the Embassy of the Netherlands in France. Today's webinar is about the topic how to participate to tenders here in France. We have a great panel of speakers and experts here today for you, and I think we have lots to talk about. So without further ado, let's get started. Allow me to introduce you to Maarten de Bruin, President of the Netherlands Business Council. Good morning, Maarten.
Good morning, Anouk. Great to be here. Thank you very much. I think it's our third webinar, correct?
Yes.
Great. Shall we then kick it off? Very good. I'm going to share my screen right now. And I have the honor to introduce actually the topic of today, which is about doing tenders in France. I'm certainly not an expert, I can tell you that. However, I've participated to quite a few of them. And I think it's definitely one of those topics which in France are fundamentally different than what we do in the Netherlands. And from that perspective, we thought it was a really, really good topic to actually give a quick overview on it and let especially experts talk about it. So maybe just 2 slides to introduce the overall perspective of tenders in France. So it's actually a big market, right? A lot of about 101 billion euros a year. So this is the 2018 number. Of money is actually spent over 152,000 tenders in France. So that's actually a huge market with up to 130 different potential buyers. Maybe one of the key things of doing business in France, and if you're a small to medium enterprise, is that actually those companies win about 61% of all the tenders, and of which even 71% when it addresses tenders that are done by local communities. So there is a big market there, and there's just a lot of activity going on there. Now, if you look at the overall split of products and works and services that are sold through those tenders, we come to about an equal split, and that's actually quite interesting because if you compare to the Netherlands, works only represent about 14% and services about 60%. So that's a fundamental difference. There are many more tenders in France that consider works like public works, road works, and all the likes. So that's really something a little bit different. There's a lot of actually policy making that on those tenders that is done in favor of small and medium businesses. So one of the first elements, and this is fundamental, is to source local. So there are contractual proximity clauses, and this has as a side effect that as a Dutch company who wants to do business in France, you actually have to become French to a certain extent in order to get that favorable proximity clause to work for you. The other one is the possibility of grouping. So different lots can be submitted in those tenders. So as a Dutch company, you can also partner up with other companies and actually respond to those tenders. A critical element is, of course, communication. So sourcing needs to be done before you actually get into the RFP, so you get known. And as many of you know, an RFP in essence and in many cases can just be the transactional moment for a relationship that has already been started before. Next is financial support. So up to 30% of the amount of the contract can be paid in advance, and this actually favors smaller companies because it allows you to get money relatively quickly to fund your cash flow and working capital. And then last but not least, there are also some models in place, for example, for innovative services and goods. So there's a specific procedure if you sell those innovative products and goods, if the market amount or the tender amount is below 100,000 euros. Okay, so very quickly, two slides about tenders in France. I would very much like to give the lead to the next speakers. So we're going to start with Jerome of Carlara, who will discuss about the legal framework in France, and then after we will have Cecilia, who will discuss about how Van Hoeven got into a tender in France and got a very nice project out of it. And then we have Etienne of Shell, and Shell has has done many tenders in France with a lot of experience and feedback out of that, and that he definitely wants to share with us. Anouk, I give now again back the floor to you.
Absolutely. Let me just share my screen with you. Yes.
To everybody, I'm very sorry not speak this morning, but unfortunately we had a schedule problem. I'm now in a train, so it would be difficult to speak to you, but I'm still reachable through WhatsApp after this very short site on the French public procurement. Shortly, my name is Jérôme Grandénon. I'm a lawyer since 12 years that I'm a partner at Carlara, which is a French law firm, multi-service law firm. And before that, I had a long career in the public service, finished as counselor of the French president and as the director for legal affairs of our Ministry of Finance. And now I'm the partner and head of the public law team in our firm. So the idea is just to have a very general and rapid approach on especially the particularity of the French public tendering. And for that, the simple way I think is to sum up the main question that have been transmitted to me, which were you put. And if you need more questions, of course, you can, after this, send me questions through mail or WhatsApp. First of all, and you have, of course, the sum up of what I'm talking in the slides, which I think could perhaps show you at the same time. First of all, perhaps in a general point of approach, what are the common points between Netherlands and France regarding public procurement? The answer is very simple. We are all under the same rules because the rules are the European rules, which are now the two directives, 2014 directive number 24 and 25. This means that the general rules about general procurement are exactly the same in Netherlands and in France. The same thresholds and the same procedures over the thresholds. Same also, that means that we also have and share the same culture of tender, as these common rules are now active in the EU since 1902. So since that, the texts have changed a lot of times. The former one, the directive was in 2004. This means that the European countries and the EU tenders have learned since 82 to tender with the same rules and the same philosophy. Means that we have now the same culture of tenders, so that makes the things quite simple. And third point, we have this same, which say legal safety in France than in the Netherlands. That means that if you have problem with a tender, you can go to the judge, and we have specialized judge and a rather really independent and efficient justice about public contracts in France as in the Netherlands. So the whole thing is we have rather not simple, it's always complicated, but a rather legally safe surrounding for our tender with rules you already know if you have been a tender in your country, in the Netherlands. The main differences are perhaps one main difference is the number of public tender. France is perhaps surely the European country which has the more public tenders public buyers, because we are the country with the biggest number of villages, and every village has its own its own budget, and is a public buyer. Nobody knows really how much public buyers we have. It's perhaps over 50,000 to be clear. To give you a real number, about this 50,000, 17,000 of them are villages with less than 500 inhabitants. So very little structures with little budgets. So the thing is that we have a very large range of public buyers in France, going to a little village to our big ministries with billions of budgets. That's really, really different. So the information to get the tenders is perhaps a little more difficult to get than another country where you have much less tendering authorities. The other really important difference is that the use of the French language, which is mandatory, we'll come back to that, in France, and that the English is not allowed as a common language for our tender. So that means that if you will be candidate at a French tender, you have to use and to make all your documents in France. We'll go back to that. Saying that, so the background is roughly the same. So we'll better immediately come to the questions. So we're going to the details. With these questions, we do not go around the whole matter, of course, but I think that these questions you have been put are really the main question every non-French company will put if it wants to go to French tender. The first question is, how can you follow the publication of tenders in France? How can you receive the alerts? Now, roughly, you have two systems. You have, of course, the public systems. You can put alerts in the national site, which is called BOMP, Bulletin Officiel des Marchés Publics. And you have the European one, the but frankly speaking, they have search providers which are not really reliable. And you only have all the tenders who are published on these sites, which means that you have all the tenders who are published over the thresholds, but you will miss many tenders who are under the thresholds and who are not obliged to go to publish on the official bulletin on the official site. So the real solution is to go through specialized private providers, and you have to pay for that, of course, and you have many of them in France. On my slide, you see, I give you 4 different. Myself, I work since many years now, as I'm responding to tenders, because I'm counseling public authorities, which is MP for France. The thing is really simple. You put your names in the site, and every tender which is in the category is sent to you every morning by mail. So the thing is very simple and very efficient. My site is MP France, which is the last on the slide. Second question: how do you gain insight into the players in France who issue tenders? That's a very, very key question. The general rules in the French legislation and in the directive is, of course, the liberty of tendering and the equality of treatments. But if you go a little further in the reality of these tenders, of course, knowing who is beside the tender, who's the boss, what is the real need, how the thing really functions, it's business. And as it's business, you have to know how it works. Coming from another country, not knowing the French administration, the local administration, I would advise two solutions. First one is to partner with engineering offices or legal offices who are used to accompany tenders in French tender. The second one, and so you have engineering offices specialized in special branches as public works or public lighting or food or sports investments, etc., etc. And as soon as you will tender on these special branches, you really have the good ideas to get a skilled engineering office or a law firm. You are about 6 to 7 very specialized law firm in France on these public contracts. And of course, with experience, we know now a bit how it works with these different administrations. The other solution is, of course, to partner with a French company who is on the same branch, who has already been tendering and knows how it works. But, and we'll go back to that, it doesn't forbid you to take your chance and try to tender by yourself, as you are completely free to do as soon as you do it in French. But if you want to go further, really, and do business on the long term, I think it's really a good thing to deal with the French specialists in the fields, whether they are technical specialists or legal specialists. Next question. What does a classic application file look like for registration in tender? This matter has been solved due to the new directive, who created the ESPD form, which is a unique form for all EU tenders. And we have now in France every public buyer in France has now the obligation to accept the ESPD. So the solution is simple. You go to the ESPD French providers and you find the address on the slide, lumcoruspro.gouv.fr. And for once and for all, you fill your file, the French ESPD, and then you can use it for any tender in France. It's now has been rather simple. It was much more complicated before this ESPD. Question of whether tender should be in French, that's the main question. Yes, there's no exception. We have a law, Loi Toubon, from a former culture minister, who oblige every public document in France has to be written in French. And as a public procurement is a public document, it has to be written in French. The only exception is sometimes with some technical aspects, but it's left to the decision of the public tender. So you have to count off the obligation to translate your whole documentation in French, and of course to write all your tender documents in French, and of course the SPD. Do you need being a foreign company to be on a reference list before being allowed to participate in sub-tenders? No, in any case. You are an EU company. As long as you're an EU company, you're completely free to tender to any tender, except some, it's very, very rare exceptions for defense tenders. And it's sometimes, but then some very, very rare tenders, procurement are reserved to national companies, but that has to be really justified. And these are really the exceptions. So you are really The market is open to any EU tenders. We cannot make national preference, as you cannot do it in the Netherlands. Next question, what are the thresholds in France for publishing tenders? That's a very good question, because you have, of course, the European tender thresholds. Over the thresholds, you have to publish in the European journal, and you have to publish it also in the French public journal, which is the BOMP. But we have a specialty in France. We have a lower threshold, 90,000 euro, over which you have to make a publicity, and you have to make the publicity in what we call Journal d'annonce légale. And behind this curious nomination, it's in fact the local press. And it's a way in France to help the local press. It's any press who can, paper press historically the paper press who can publish legal announces, can publish these tenders. And now, of course, even if it's published in the paper, local paper, newspaper, they all have now sites, and it's published also on their site. So the research provider will find it. So that means that as long as you use a private provider, you will have access to any tender over 19,000 euro. Under these thresholds, these things are a little more complicated, but now the vast majority of tenders, even the little local one, have all a site, and they publish it on their site, and the research engines find it on all the French sites. So you will have them also. There's another important threshold I wanted to point out, is what we call the de minimis threshold, which is the threshold under which the buyers are completely free to do whatever they want. So they do not have to make a competition, they do not have to launch a procedure. And this threshold has been lifted during the years. 10 years ago, it was 4,000 euros, 15 years ago, and now it's 40,000 euros. So under 40,000 euro, the buyers have a liberty really to decide or not if they go with competition. They can do it, but not obliged. Over 40,000 euro, there are no real rules, but they have to apply principles, and the main principle is competition. So have to do a minimum of publicity, and they have to lead a real competition. How do public purchasing centers work? So we have purchasing centers. We have one big national purchasing center, which is called l'UGAP, which is a purchasing center which works for the state administration and the local administrations. It's a very big one. And we have also purchasing centers, mostly for the medical procurement, the medical area. The functions as the other buyers. They publish, of course, they make competition. The only difference that they buy sometimes on a very bigger scale, larger scale than all the other buyers. But it's very, of course, useful to get on the site of the UGAP, and so you inscribe yourself. You put also the category where you will want to be candidates, and so you'll have also directly their tender. Now with the internet, everything is quite simple. And last question, is it advisable to engage a specialist when bidding for a tender? Yes, when it's worth, it means for the bigger contracts. Now it's very, very common in France that the tender come with their engineering, engineering help and with legal help. So with a lawyer and with engineering. That's very, very useful in the complicated contracts, in the heavy contracts, in the high level. That's nothing uncommon, and now the public buyers are completely used to this way of acting. The thing is, the advantage of using these external help is that you have at your side people who have normally a good experience of these of this field, good experience of this standard, good experience of how administration work, how you can discuss and negotiate with them. And this is why it could be really useful, especially if you, for your first tender in France. That was shortly what I was planning to explain to you. Really regret that I cannot be there to answer to other questions, but do not hesitate to send me these questions by WhatsApp. Even now, in the train, I think I will be able to answer, or further on by mail. And of course, I respond to any question. I will give you also my phone number. You can also call me on my cell phone. There's no problem with that. Do not hesitate. And sorry again for my absence. Have a good day and good continuation of this meeting. Bye-bye to all.
I would like to thank Jérôme for his legal masterclass this morning. Like he said, and like I would like to repeat, is that if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to send these to him directly, or to write them down here in the chat. We are in contact with Jérôme as we speak, so we will get back to you then as soon as possible. Side note, Jérôme also made a lovely presentation, and this presentation is published on our website, and the link to that presentation is also shared via the chat. So let's continue the webinar with our next guest. We have invited the company Van Hoeven CS, which is an architectural firm here in the Netherlands. Van Hoeven CS actually won the tender to design a swimming pool, and not just a swimming pool, no, a swimming pool for the Olympic Games in Paris. Let me invite Cecilia here on stage, because I would like you to meet all Cecilia Gross. She is architect, partner and director of Van Hoeven CS. Welcome, Cecilia.
Welcome. Thanks, everybody. I will just share my own experience, I will say. And to mention first maybe that I'm French. So for what Jérôme said with French languages, it really helps to be French, but I'm also partner director of the architecture office, which is based in Amsterdam and now settled for 20 years in Amsterdam. I will share my presentation. I actually made a compilation of 6 tips out of our own experience. And I will say, let's go there. Now, I will say first one, it's really about time. I mean, what we deduce, it's really a long-term strategy to go abroad your own country and on markets. So basically in 2012, we decided as a company to go to the French markets and say, okay, perfect, Cecilia is French, it's going to be easy. Well, it takes a little bit of time, even with the advantage of the language. So actually for 4 years, we were really busy to talk, let's say, but it's finally after 4 years that we start to be officially selected for a final phase tender. I mean, in architecture tendering, you're first selected to be part of the competition. Is between 3 to 5 teams they're selecting, and then if you win the competition, then you've got the commission, let's say. And so from 2016, we start to be selected, of course, in 17, in 18, in 19 too. And finally, in 2020, we finally won our first project that Anouk talked about. Was not the plan to start with the biggest project in France, but let's say we improvise with it. So long-term strategy, and yeah, tips, be patient, and it takes a while, but The second point, it's okay, we go to the French market. What is actually our added value, and not only our added value on the Dutch market, but really in comparison for the French market. So in that sense, I think the way of working of Netherlands, it's really added value to be very direct, to be very efficient. But along our own company, we really looked, we very wide architecture office. So we're making trains, bridge, cities, buildings. So we had to make a choice, okay, where we have now our strongest selling point to go to the French market. And then we choose to go for our swimming pool experience. So we say, okay, swimming pool experience, we've got, we are very innovative, sustainable, let's go with it and focus on that specific market, which is actually very small in France in the architecture branch, but it's very easy to see who are the key player. So I said third tips is really do research, do to know what are the field players. It goes from advisors, partners, but it's also go about operators, because of course the kind of market is also sometimes in design, build, finance, operates. So we need to know the whole range of people. And when you know them, I mean, you know where they are, you have to get to know each other. So really meet them in person, go to France, and of course, preferably around a lunch table. That's how the best meeting are always within the French culture. So I will say the first 4 years was a lot about learning how it works, what doesn't work, and who are the key player, and meet them. Then Jérôme said it. I think that's even the most important is when you know a bit everybody, is you have to really choose what's going to be your local partners. I mean, as Dutch office, sometimes have the feeling I'm learning again my own profession, and I'm French in France by doing another project, because everything was just slightly a bit different, especially the administration. It's very, very different in political system. So you definitely need to ask first step to go, I will say, married with a French partners, because it has to be built really on trust in the way. So help the partners to gain another expertise and learn their expertise to the French market. And definitely, if I see all the tenders we did, the right team, because you always subscribe in team, is really a guarantee of the big part of your success, let's say. On that point, we also start to get advice from an independent office, which actually only is based for architectural offices, and they help us to build up teams. So that was very, also after all the work we did, a speed up in our French market, because they could select in advance all the tenders was going to be online. So like I say, make strategic choices. For us was, okay, let's go for the swimming pool. Let's go for swimming pool above this amount of money, and it should be reachable. So we made all our criteria, which means you can't respond to a lot of tenders, but at least you select them and you really work them, I will say, way before they're online. So who are the players? And now this small office really help us. So which engineers we need to have in the team, which influencer, or just to meet the city before the tender is online, just to present yourself that you also could be a very interesting candidate for their tender. So that's really actually strategic, and it's better to do less, but to do them good, because you have way more chance of success than if you are not doing it. And I will say that every tender that we made, that we lost, it's also a part of all the steps in getting known and have been selected. That's also important and granted. And the last one, success. Like everywhere in the world, if you do a tender, you have to do your best to reach in all criteria, all the best score. That's all the time the same. So you need to have the best team, like I say, and all the criteria are very important. And it could be also a very, very long tender. If I look back at the aquatic center, it's going to be built in front of the Stade de France in Paris, and it's going to be used for the Olympic Games. Actually, it's the only building, really public building, they will build for the Olympic Games, and also with a bridge across the highway, the A1. It's a tender. I think we work a year to be part of a team, because it was design, build, finance, operates. So we knew that there would be 2 or 3 teams maximum. It's impossible. So you have the big builders, the big operators. So I will say the big fight was to be able to be as architect, because you have then 400, 500 architects who want to be in a team, to reach the team. And then when we succeeded, it's maybe cost a year. We finally had a team, and then you're in a race of the official tender, but it's start in November 2018 and we heard we won in May 2020. So it takes 2 years that you also invest for a big project, because of course it demands a lot of investment. But we're very happy that we won it with all teams, with the builders, with operators. It's really teamwork. Yeah, and the last words, a bit of luck. I mean, of course you have to be his best, but sometimes always helps. So that was the tips and tricks for me from architectural point of view.
Thank you so much, Cecilia, for your insightful testimony. I think there are so many different factors on how you start such a process and what the actual outcome is going to be. So a lot of factors and a lot of changes and a lot of risk, of course. But I think because of sharing your testimony, it will give a lot of insight, tips and tricks, and also inspiration to the Dutch companies who would like to make that same move, and also maybe would like to design a swimming pool. But thank you so much. Please let us continue to our next speaker of today. I would like to invite Etienne Delcroix here on stage. Etienne is business developer for offshore wind at Shell. Welcome on stage, Etienne. Am I correct to assume that you're going to talk a little bit about, the insights? You're going to share maybe a little bit of the Coca-Cola recipe of Shell and how you participate to tenders?
Yes, absolutely. Hi. Hi, everyone. Hi, Anouk. Thanks all. Very happy to be here. So yes, indeed, I am the offshore wind business manager for Shell in France. Very glad to meet you. As you can hear, I'm French too. So I think this is the third of the speakers that are French, which is true, is a key point for following the activity in France. So today I'm gonna focus a little bit on my own activity, what I know best, but keep in mind that Shell is in France for more than 100 years now. So we are not a foreign company anymore, I would say, and we are quite knowledgeable about France. But I will focus now on the energy side of things and renewable energy in particular. And to do so, I will share my screen. I think that's a, oops, sorry, hold on. There we go. And to do so, I will say a quick word about what is driving us in following these large tenders that we are seeing in France that I will present later. So our climate ambition for the world is one of the most ambitious amongst our oil and gas competitors, because we want to be net zero emission by 2050, and this is our driver when we are looking at France on 3 lines: our own operation, net zero. So that's something that we must reduce and achieve to net zero by 2050. We want also to reduce the net carbon footprint of the energy product we sell, 65% by 2050, and again, the very ambitious target, the customer emission net zero by 2050. So for that, we must find a way in France to participate to this net zero ambition. So now I'm jumping into what I know best. So really the offshore wind landscape in France. So these slides summarize a bit what has happened since 2011. So you had 3 rounds so far of tenders, very large tenders. So that's about 500 megawatt capacity. So it's let's say 50 to 80 turbine. So the French state started as most of the country in Europe did in 2011. And then we have seen 3 rounds in 2011, 13, and 16, which were awarded to French player, but sometime in consortium, and to a foreign player as well. A quick note to say where Shell is and why we have followed the tips that were presented before by Cecilia is the floating pilot that you can see here. So it's like a test project of few units that Shell has acquired, and it paves the way in a sense to larger standards that we are doing now. We award also, because it was in the news this Monday, Shell has been what we call pre-qualified to participate to the next tender in Normandy, so number 4 here. And this also set, so we are six players, and it sets a bit the ambition of Shell to play at a large scale for the offshore wind tenders. So the tips, I think I agree with the Cecilia's tips, but on this slide you can see the pace of the tenders. They were launched in 2011, 13, 16, and now 20. But it's true that each time a tender was launched, it was the formalizations of discussions that took place way before. So the fact that the tender is launched shall not be a trigger for you to say, okay, let's look at France. That's going to be too late. In terms of where did Shell started, so we really started in 2016 with the first bid, and at that time we were in consortium with other players that were knowledgeable about France. We were qualified, but we didn't win this tender. And now Shell has become more French again, if possible, by acquiring a French company, a French developer called EOFI. And so now we are really well connected in the background, and now we are going for the next tender on our own. Again, so we have been following all the discussions, but now we feel comfortable enough to not partner for the tender. I think my focus here maybe is to explain a bit to any companies where to play, depending on the size of your company and your target. Shell is obviously one of the largest companies in the world, so we are looking at huge tenders. The capex is several billions, so maybe that's not for all companies, but you can do it. You probably need to have a local partner to understand how it works, and as long as you follow the EU rules, and you match with the criteria, selection criteria, you can participate. Be aware that there are strong requirements on the balance sheet and the technical capacity, of course, that it's a long road to win. It's several years. So again, if you want to go there, be prepared to go early and to be patient. Yeah, again, I think I'm repeating Cecilia's tip. And also need to mention for offshore wind, France has seen several recourses on the tenders, not on the tender, sorry, but on the permitting associated to the tenders, which have delayed the project quite a bit. So again, if you are the winner of the tender, be prepared for a long road, a long shot effort. So that's really if you want to play for the top tier of the tender. But there are two other possibilities to enter into the French market. So the number 2 on this slide is after the what we call the recourses, or when the permits are fully approved. Then a company like Shell will take their own FID, so the confirmation that they want to do the project, and then we will launch a subcontract. So it's usually large subcontract of several million euros. And again, we can. It's open to any company, and especially Shell has a long experience of contracting with any entity worldwide. So this can be private or public tender, depending on who set who won the project. If it's for example a public company like EDF, they are subject to the public market and the public procurement laws. So that's the second entry door into this kind of tenders. And the third entry door is when the project will be in the construction and operation phase. Then you have some service and supply contract that again can be provided by any company. It can be again public or private, under public or private law. It's usually for smaller contract value, but it's open to all, and that's again typically good to have people on the ground to connect, like any business development. But when it's public tender, it can be tricky to understand properly the system and have a French speaker, because as Jérôme said, any document that is submitted to the French state must be in French, and any meeting that is done with the French state must be in French too. And so that's going to be probably a difficult part. And typically, Shell, we had to translate 1,000 of pages of annual reports just to make sure that we are compliant with the French state requirement. That's going to be it for me. Anouk, if you want to take over.
Of course. Could you please stop sharing your screen? Yes, perfect. So thank you so much for your, for a little bit, the Coca-Cola recipe. I think if people have questions, they can still enter it via the chat. And then we arrive at the final part of our webinar, and that is the Q&A. I would like to invite back on stage Cecilia. Yes, welcome back. And also Maarten, if he's available. So, yes, there we are now, the 4 of us. We have about 10 minutes to go. So I saw one question to Cecilia. How will you know of the tender before it is online? And this is a question of Rinzi van Minnen.
That's a good one. There's different tricks in architecture. Before you have a tender about the architecture, you have a tender of the city to help for advisor to make the programs of the project. So then we select on all this stuff. So you know that it's 1 year before they will select the advisor to write the programs with them. So you know a bit. And the people who write programs for swimming pool, it's very specified. There are 5 or 6 advisors that you already met, that you already know. Doesn't mean that you're being selected, but then you can really see, okay, what's going on. You can a bit adjust when it's going to be out. And that's also something that the little office is helping us in from Paris too. So they're doing all the selection work for us, and then they say, hey, I've got something interesting, and we say yes or no. And if we say yes, and we just focus on that one to get well prepared.
Right. Okay. Thank you. I do have also a question for Etienne. I would like to ask you a little bit about time, because both of you actually say like it takes, well, you need to have patience. But if we are going to be a little bit more concrete, like the amount of time. So what do you, what is your estimation between the moment of participation to the actual moment of construction? Could you say a little bit more about that?
Yes. So in France, there are what is planned and what happens. So what was planned for the first round of the tenders was a tender. I think the tender itself takes maybe 1.5 years, and then the winner has to get all the permits for the project and then to build the project. And it happens that the permits were changed quite a lot, and that has pushed some. The first project, it took almost 10 years, and they are still not in the water yet, but they are being built now. So it took about 10 years to get where we are now. So during these 10 years, the states realized that we had some legal and regulatory issues. So we did change the law. That's much more efficient now. And as of today, the tender process is still about 1.5 years. And then we expect to have 3 years to do all the permitting, engineering, and prepare the decision, and then you can actually build the project. So we are within let's say 4 or 5 years time frame here, if everything goes well.
Thank you. So you're talking actually about a lot of rules. Do you find all these rules around tenders transparent? Do you think it's transparent enough for them to participate?
It's a point on which the French state is very cautious, because we know that we have could be seen as awarding all our projects to national players, which isn't really true. So they are very cautious about that. And then from my point of view, yes, the rules are clear and they are followed by all. After it's maybe the sensitivity and the understanding of the French context that foreign players do a little bit less well than others. But yes, in my view, things are very clear. The rules are very clear and fair.
Anouk, I maybe have a question for both. There's a little bit, so we speak about cultural differences, right? So what does a tender mean? How do we access it? But I have a question which more goes into, how do you protect yourself? So my question is a little bit, do you also ask specific contract lawyers in France to help you interpret the elements in here? How do you secure actually the engagement of your company into these tenders?
That's a good one. I will say from the tender phase, it was okay from the field of architecture. But for the contract, of course, we used a French lawyer, jurist, specialized in architecture branch to help us for all the nice contracts talk. That's for sure. No, you really need it.
Etienne?
Yeah, same. We as I said, we are French for Node.js, but we still need to have some specialized specialized advisors when times come. Yeah.
Okay, understood. I think that I think is absolutely something that's necessary, especially because these are long-term contracts that you then come in, right? And there are quite a certain set of obligations that you have to respect within a certain framework, I assume. So from that perspective, okay, that's a good point. Thank you very much.
Yep.
Cecilia, I have another question to you. How did the public network, more in particular the Embassy of the Netherlands in France, help you in this matter?
Yeah, for sure. I took part of some exchange in Paris organized by the embassy with some field players like big building companies. So it was definitely a first step to meet people, and that helps a lot to come with the embassy. Let's say I'm not just I'm Cecilia Gross and I can talk French and I've got a good architecture office. That's not enough. So that's a bit what I say. You have to know each other. You have to use everybody you know on network, every support. And now the embassy was very supportive. Very nice. Thanks.
There is a question, Anouk, here on something which actually I introduced in the beginning, which I talked about proximity, but it was really about environmental clauses. So there are many tenders now include environmental clauses in there. The question is maybe both to you, Etienne, and you, Cecilia. Do you see this coming up specifically? And have you had that in your specific tenders recently?
You mean environmental as sustainability make
sustainability.
our world better?
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
Definitely. But we have to. That's why Etienne is also in offshore. No, but that's really an agenda of the politics, and we're talking about Paris. There's agreement of Paris. So for sure, the Olympic swimming pool, there was very, very high ambition. They want to be the most sustainable games of the history. So the targets were really high, and we're very thankful for it, because if the targets are high in tender, you have to do it. So you have to innovate. So we have a whole wood construction that was never built before that we are going to do. So no, it's definitely on the agenda. Also socially, I mean, the builder, so Bouygues really has to employ a lot of small enterprise. So it's also sometimes you want to have the big tender, but like Etienne said, there's all these small tenders. I mean, if project is big up with big player, there's a lot of place to work for him, also to work to him, because they have obligation. I don't remember the percentage, but 35 or 40% should come from small and middle enterprise. Some of them have to be locally, some of them have to be with jobless people, reinsertion. So that's in my way more in the tender, let's say, for this one than what I can see in the Netherlands. But Etienne.
Yeah. Thanks, Cecilia. And I think I can take that one in twofold to answer to Rince's question. So first, I need to defend a bit Shell, say that we have a credibility issue in the area of ecological. It's good that I get this feedback, because it means that we need to keep explaining what Shell is doing. Shell is really pushing into transforming itself into a utility to serve customers. So we have this strong ambition that I tried to explain very quickly at the beginning. Is a roadmap for us. This is really what we want to explain. But now Shell is willing to be a utility and sell energy to help to decarbonize our business and our customers' business. So we are really serious into it. But of course, we have a few years of legacy that comes with a site of Shell. After on the offshore wind field, Shell is one of the most knowledgeable players, and we do operate offshore wind turbine already. We have several places in the world where we do have wind farms. So we know, I mean, we know what we're doing, and I think we can do it. Probably we are probably the best company to do it because of the oil and gas offshore history. Then in terms of tenders and how it's set up by France. So of course, the purpose of the tenders being to decarbonize the energy. Of course, we have very strong requirements to tackle arguments like people saying, yes, but it costs more energy to build the turbine than the energy produced by the turbine, which is not true. So believe me. So of course we do have strong requirements. We do have also requirements to make sure that local communities and people impacted by the tenders where the wind turbine will be placed. Those companies benefit actually from the tenders, and it's not going to be a plug and play of a turbine which is built in Asia or anywhere else. So we do have strong requirements, yes, in terms of local players and the environmental impact. And last word, sorry. We are always challenged on the fact that putting turbine at sea is dangerous and can disturb mammals or birds. And so we have very strong, like before putting a turbine at sea, you have to take 2 years of measurements to see how many fish, birds, what is the sound subsea. And so we are doing all these studies. Then we are looking at what our project, how our project will impact all this. And then during the whole 20, 30, 40 years of the project life, we are going to monitor this and make sure that we feed back also all the French community of what is the real impact of an offshore wind farm, to make sure that there is no big impact, and to also build the knowledge of everyone and making sure that we share the fact of what's happening offshore.
Thank you, Etienne. Thank you, Cecilia. I think that's about it with the questions. Martin, do you have anything else?
No, I think we're good here.
I think we're also good. I have a look at the clock and it's 2 minutes past 11, so I think we should round up. Thank you so much, Cecilia, for your testimonial. Thank you, Etienne, for explaining what Shell does and how it deals with its tenders. Thank you, and we're going to see you soon. Just a last word. The presentations of the speakers here today, together with a recording of the webinar, will be published on our website, and the hyperlink has been shared with you a little bit before here in the chat. If you have any remaining questions, please don't hesitate to send that or to Jérôme or to me directly, and we will get back to you with an answer. Also, all the questions that you have put in the chat or that you will send, these will also be published. So the questions and the answer on the website. So that said, let's move a little bit forward, because next month we are organizing a next webinar, unfortunately still offline. Online we're preparing as well, but so online we will organize a webinar on how to set up a business in France. We will organize this with our partner Choose Paris Region. So any company, any Dutch company who has the ambition to come to France, this webinar is for you. Martin, do you have anything to add at this moment?
No, I think thank you very much, Anouk, for the organization again today. And I think for everyone here on the webinar, thank you for your participation as well. We're looking forward to see you actually on the next one.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Hope to see you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.